Hello everyone, my name's Mark Waite. I'm a worldwide client platforms architect at HPE Point Next. I work in the worldwide network, workplace and IoT team, and I support my peers in my local geographies all around the world. I've been at HPE around 4 years, prior to which I was an enterprise architect and techie within lots of different IT departments over the last 20 years. I'm joined by Chris Hicks from Citrix. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Chris Hicks, solution architect with Citrix. I've been with Citrix for about 20 years, give or take, various technical roles always. My latest being solution architect dedicated to HPE. And happy to be here today with Mark and discussing our latest topic.
And without further ado, what we'll do is we'll jump into the session. So what we wanted to do was sort of give you some of our experience and tips from what we've done over the last few years, but also what we've seen in the last few months as well. And we're going to give you the top 5 sort of gotchas, pitfalls and challenges we've seen in a VDI implementation. Whether you're talking about an on-premise VDI, it could be a full cloud VDI, or it could even be a hybrid implementation. So Chris and I are just going to chat about all these different tips and the things we've seen and try and give you some tricks and understand how to do this successful VDI implementation. So without further ado, I'll get into the first tip, which is don't reinvent the wheel. So you might think that what you're doing from a VDI perspective, it's a unique challenge. You're facing and trying to mobilize a specific application. Well, I can tell you, you're not the only person to try and do this. You know, you might be oil and gas and you're trying to mobilize Petrel, for example. Well, we've done Petrel for, I don't know, 5, 6 different customers. We've actually built VDI platforms for oil and gas, many big oil and gas environments. But it also could be a financial trading platform. So whatever it is that you're trying to do, I can guarantee this isn't unique. And we know the pitfalls and the issues, and what we try and say is don't reinvent the wheel. We can help you with that.
That's an excellent point, Mark. You know, even though it might look obvious, the deployment, and it might look more obvious since you're rushed to deploy sometimes. Sometimes there are applications or scenarios within the deployment that can really cause kind of a kink in the rollout, and it is absolutely vital to have the experience with those particular variables to make this go smoothly. It can come down to an application, an application that maybe you're not familiar with in terms of deploying it through a VDI type of solution. But those kinds of things, knowing what's coming ahead, having the experience with certain applications or particulars in your rollout will make your rollout go simpler.
I think one of the points that you and I have talked about in the past is around persistence versus non-persistence. And that can be a real challenge when someone's building a brand new VDI platform, is how do I deal with the new non-persistent world, and how do I deal with things like Office 365 in this non-persistent world and OneDrive and all that type of stuff. So, we can help with that. And I think the other thing is, it's not just the resources of us, there's also people like the Citrix user group are really helpful in that instance as well. There's a really good resource available there. So don't reinvent the wheel. Don't think you're on your own doing this. We've probably all done it before. So with that in mind, I think the second tip really aligns with that, and that is the fast without the failure, or look before you leap. So that aligns with our previous tip. Once you've got the right information and the right design, and that platform can then help you deliver an effective VDI environment. So I think one of the things that I want to pick up on here is, during the pandemic, I've done a lot of work with corporates where they've thrown in a solution really quickly. In some instances, it could have been a Windows RDS implementation, not necessarily Citrix. It could have just been a terminal services solution to allow people to work remotely. It could even be that they've done some other hurried implementation, and it's not been great. They've had real poor experience with it. They've had a challenge with getting it working properly, those type of things. That's because they've had to throw it in without knowing what they want to design it and build it. And actually, we can help do that. There's a lot of really good, again, information. We've got reference architectures that we can share with you on specific types of personas. And I know that Citrix have the same as well. So don't feel like you can't rush it through without looking at the detail. You know, the devil's in the detail in the design. So, Chris?
It's so true. This is a vital point. You know, it's absolutely critical that you take a moment at least to do an assessment of your environment, to understand where you're going so that you can, first of all, identify all the variables and things that are going to be pertaining to this deployment. But the idea that you must go through a process, there are certain steps that just cannot be missed, no matter how urgent this deployment is. You know, there is a process, there's a methodology that must be followed, and you know, HPE, of course, is adept at this, and will make your rollout much easier.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. So that leads on to the partners side of things. So our next point is who you're going to call. HPE and Citrix have had a long-standing partnership, but there's also the partnerships that HPE have got with other third parties as well. So people like Liquidware and Quest and other tooling that allows us to do some clever stuff around analysis and help you make sure that on that previous point of the design, if you've got all the information and understanding what your platform look like and what your users need to look like, it helps you build a platform that's going to be available for your users. So there's that partnership, but also I'd like to mention the really key one, of course, which is Citrix and Microsoft. So not only are we talking about HPE wanting to put tin inside your data center, but there's also the opposite side of the coin, which HPE PointNext will help you also do Windows Virtual Desktop implementations. You know, we understand things like how MCS can help save you money running on Azure, for example, and that Citrix, Azure, and Microsoft partnership is so key to this.
Yeah, I could just reiterate. I think that you know, often it seems like Citrix is right in the middle of the deployment, but there are so many other parts around that that are very important. One being, you know, understanding the relationship with Microsoft and their applications. And Microsoft, our relationship with Microsoft goes back to the beginning. Actually, they were one of the original investors in Citrix, and you know, we have always had a strong partnership. And I think that that really makes for you know, a deployment where you get all the necessary pieces and the expertise with regard to those pieces, you know, come to bear on this kind of project, and I think that your results will show the difference.
So that all being taken into account, we've got a key rule that we have to take into here. So security, rule number one for every project on this is security. Please do not think you can skip the security. And actually, to be fair, VDI, the use case for VDI is a mainly security use case. You know, wherever I've put it in the past, it's been to protect specific environments, specific platforms, specific data. And you know, it's only the pixels that are coming to you, and it's only the keystrokes that are going to the device. And actually, in some cases, it's an obfuscated version of the keystrokes, because using the Citrix tooling, you can randomize what a keylogger would see, but you're still sending the right keystrokes to the service. So that's very clever in the fact that you could use this zero trust device and still allow access to your platform. So if you are deploying this really quickly and having to roll it out in an emergency situation like we had earlier in the year, you can have a device that you don't trust still accessing it securely, and you can control that perimeter really easily. So
right. And Mark, I also think it's worth mentioning that you know, a lot of the value of this type of deployment is really a byproduct of the structure of the deployment. You know, moving parts that are originally in the periphery into a central location. There are things that come from that, security being one of them. You know, the fact that you have more control over the environment, you know, all comes from really the model itself. And yeah,
totally agree. There's actually a good example we're going to talk about in a minute, isn't there? in the use cases. So we're going to give you some use cases in a bit that's really good, that sort of keep this in mind, that what we've just said, because this is going to amplify in a minute, and you'll get why we're talking about this. And I think our final point, final 5 tip is future-proof your environment. So when you build an environment, don't build it for now, build it for 2 years time, okay? 2 or 3 years time. And the reason for that is, we've been in and done a lot of work with customers where they are having to expand their infrastructure because they built it for that state in time 2 or 3 years ago on themselves, and have found that Windows 10 has upgraded and they've got this 30-month cadence now, and they're suddenly finding that, oh, well, I need to buy some GPUs, we need some grid licensing, we need to do this. That, you know, they designed a DL380 that ran 40 users that can now only support 36, 38 users simultaneously, because Windows has grown and Office has grown, and you know, that spread has happened. So one of the tips we would say is make sure you scale it, design it for scale, don't design it for today.
Right, right, and that's an excellent point, and you know, surprisingly overlooked. You know, but one thing, just keep in mind, the last time you've heard of a application upgrade that required less resources, or an operating system upgrade that required less resources, it's not going to happen. So it is good to keep that in mind, and you know, factor that into the deployment that you have today.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a good point, Chris. So real world lessons, we wanted to give you some of the examples that we've seen, and obviously we can't talk about customers on this, but these are real world examples that we're going to talk about. We're just going to give you some understanding of what challenges people have had and how we've sort of fixed them. So the one that I always like to talk about, and there is references out there that you can go and find the details about it, but there's a car manufacturer that we were involved with a couple of years ago, and this car manufacturer came to us because they were using third-party contractors to design and build their cars, and they were allowing CAD access to their full fat CAD application on laptops that they were giving to these contractors. And they suddenly found that a competitor had designed a car that looked almost identical to one of their in-flight prototypes. So it hadn't been released yet, hadn't even been out there with the camouflage on it. No one had seen it. This thing was only internally designed. And suddenly this new car appears, and it's got these design cues that just so happen to match, like for like, almost entirely this car that they designed. And it was like, how have they done that? And what they found was these contractors were basically being paid a lot of money to copy the designs, the CADs, onto USB sticks, and they were being given to their mates who worked for competitive car industry, and they were copying them away. So what we ended up doing was working with that customer to implement a VDI solution that sits in their data center. So you would think, well, CAD on VDI, does that work? And it's like, oh yeah, it works really well. You put a lot of compute in there. You can basically create workstation class environments, put NVIDIA grid GPUs in there. So you put some really, really chunky GPUs in there. You can even have some CUDA cores and some AI in there if you want. So you've got this processor in there, you put it all in your data center. And actually, in some instances, what that does is, rather than you having to replace all of the workstations that are all sat out there, these expensive devices for the CAD design, of which only maybe 30 or 40% of them are being used at any one time around the world, you can centralize that into one platform that gives you that resilience and capability, but with less endpoints, and gives you ability to sort of time shift more people on that platform. So that's what we did for them, and they ended up allowing their teams to do those designs remotely, and it worked really well. And Chris,
Right.
Have you got an example you can share with us?
Oh yeah, I could think of another example, a company that's a joint customer of ours, that they're in the entertainment business, and they produce and release animated features that we probably have all seen. You know, they have a couple of concerns, one being security and, you know, maintaining, you know, a firm hold on whatever it is they're developing, film clips wise. But their biggest constraint in producing these features really is the talent that they can have working on these projects. And this particular deployment allowed them to cast a wider net worldwide, where they could have, you know, artists working from home in their pajamas to produce, you know, whatever the latest iteration is of the animated feature that you might have seen recently. That being said, the security was key for them too, maintaining control over that. And you know, we can all point to examples recently where specifically in the entertainment business, where security has been maybe glossed over a bit more than it should have, and it has led to horrible results. So I just think it's a very interesting subject. The fact that you can, cast a wider net to pull that talent in that otherwise would be unavailable to the company is something that I think is kind of neat.
Well, that's something I only learned recently as well from talking to Citrix, was that there are a lot of television stations that use VDI in their main editing process. I think the other one that I would add to this is finance. So we've done, at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a lot of financial customers expand their VDI environments. One of the things that HPE sells is a thing called Moonshot. So if you're new to VDI and you don't know what Moonshot is, the way to think of it is put lots of workstations in a blade chassis, and effectively Citrix sits as the management layer over the top of that. So the cool thing about Moonshot is the finance industry, they use it for traders. So trader workstations, you have a one-to-one relationship with the blade. So Citrix sits as the management layer, but you have an individual blade in that chassis that is your desktop PC that you are remotely connecting to. And that way they get the resilience, and they're not sharing with anyone else, and they've got dedicated GPUs, and it gives them the ability to run all of the trading workstations, like 3 monitors at 4K. All of that is supported, and HDX protocol gives them that support, gives them the Teams offloading as well, but they can still do their work when they're sat at home. So what can we bring to the table? I hope we've given you some clarity around what HPE and Citrix can bring together, what the partnership does, what technology we've seen, and we've given you some tips around what to look out for. But also, we've got a strategy that we've driven for years around remote work and work anywhere, and now it's really expanded in the last few months. We've seen a huge growth in remote working and VDI. I know that Citrix have seen a huge expansion in VDI uptake in the last few months because of remote work. But we've done it all before. We've got the right partnerships, we've got the right teams to be able to talk to. You've got geo attachments from each of the different HPE areas, and we HPE have aligned with all of the different Citrix geos as well. So each of our counterparts in each of the different geographies has a Citrix counterpart as well who can work with. So we can bring all of that partnership across with all our sort of horizontal partners, but also our vertical partners. So, I think we've got a really compelling argument here. The other thing I want to add, before I ask Chris for his ideas here, is Citrix Workspace as well. Citrix Workspace with Intelligence is something we've put a lot of effort into as well, which is very new. That aggregation piece and bringing all your apps together. So definitely go and have a look at that. If you're not aware of what that is, it's fantastic. It's really good. It does depend on Citrix Cloud, but it is a brilliant, brilliant tool. Makes all those SaaS apps bring together into one view.
Right. Excellent point. I think that, with the partnership that we have with HPE and particularly their entry into the development of micro applications and workflows as part of our intelligence experience, I think that you're with a good partner. You're with a partner that really kind of knows how to use what we offer, the latest and greatest, in terms of how we can provide the best end user experience, which has always been our goal from the beginning. Always trying to provide something, even under remarkable circumstances or applications, multimedia applications that seem impossible to access and work with remotely. Our technology has always been kind of geared towards how to do that with good performance, fluid interaction, and high degree of security. There are some excellent white papers, I would say, on HP's website too that you might want to check out that could give you more, really more things to think about beyond what we've talked about today here. There's the Transform Rapid Cycle Application Delivery, 5 guiding principles to enrich the workplace experience. They are on top of the latest technology, so you can be assured that your partnership with HPE, your Citrix deployment, will be taking advantage of what we have to offer to date.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I think I'll wrap it up by saying, look, as Chris has said, go and have a look at our website, which is there. We've got Citrix have an equivalent website for us as well, so you can see all the different partnership stuff that's available. So what I'll do is I'll say thank you very much, Chris. This has been fantastic. Thank you for your time.